I mean, once you do get married, you should have a divorce lawyer on speed dial.
Oh my god!
Wow, dude, that Joel, you win. You win.
Wow, you just made Josh explode beer.
Wow, dude, that's my whole goal in life is to make people do that.
Dude, that was I can't believe that happened.
Full blown movie spit take.
That was
you guys' next movie has to be called Joel Wins the Internet.
I know what's going in the highlight reel.
Okay, guys, we're all here. There's a bunch of cousins in the room. This is the most people we've ever had on this podcast. I count 6 of us. 3 sets of brothers. We got 2 Vibberts, 2 Danners, and 2 Guthries. That's because Mr. Matt Guthrie is back on the show here with his younger brother, Josh, next to him on the couch for the first time in probably, a couple months? I don't know. How often do you guys see each other?
You know what?
You're on the couch.
Yeah.
Too much.
Aww, I knew this was going to happen.
Everybody just hates each other.
I just am glad that you mentioned we're brothers, because otherwise no one could probably tell. I can't wait for our mom to watch this, because her boys, as she would say, are on the podcast together, and for us to say something that makes her
Cringe.
Cringe.
Which is bound to happen.
Well, speaking of families, today we're going to talk about something really important, divorce.
Keeping it positive.
It's not that important.
Keep it positive. Yeah. We're gonna do. No, as anybody who has no idea who we are or what we're talking about, in the past I have mentioned that I am currently engaged, and I've been doing a lot of studying about marriage and getting ready for the old plunge.
And getting out of it?
Yeah, maybe second guessing myself a little bit. But no, Luke and Joel have been married for a couple of years. Matt has been married for almost 20 years now, right?
Yeah, I'll be 19 this year.
Wow.
Coming up on it. So we have some expertise.
By the way, I'm the oldest cousin.
Yeah. Yes.
Dude, they know.
Yeah.
You can tell. But Cody's been in a long-term relationship. Josh is single, and I am obviously engaged. So we have different perspectives we can provide on this here. Before we get into divorce, I want to know from the people here who are married what the most distinct difference is between dating and marriage. What is the thing? Because it is a very cliche thing. Everyone always goes, "Don't get married, man. Don't do it." And I know they're half kidding, but the other half I go,
depends on who you're talking to.
What is it?
Taxes.
I would say the bigger difference is from not living together to living together, whether you're married or not.
And so what is the biggest contributing factor to living together that makes it so miserable?
You didn't say miserable.
well, in the context of
Assumptions are being made.
When the people always say you shouldn't get married, that's what I mean. Is in that context.
Dylan already has his mind made up.
So what is the biggest this is what causes problems? We're getting to the divorce part here in a second. So.
I can't wait to be miserable with you.
Yeah.
Better to be miserable
I
together.
guess what you're asking is, of all of the challenges or difficulties that can come with either marriage or moving in together, what would they be?
Absolutely.
And I'm single, but I have experience in that. Never been married, but moving in together. But we can let Joel go.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a question that's like a huge umbrella term, right? Because it's going to be different for every person you ask that question. Every couple is different. Everybody has like their own little things that annoy each other or whatever. But once you live together, it's like you find out, like it depends on like when you move in with each other. But if it's like still sort of early on in the relationship, like everybody's careful around each other, making sure you don't like leave a mess in the living room or in the kitchen or whatever.
It's still like that for Matt.
Yeah. And then there's a turning point where all of a sudden you're just like, I'm living with a frat or a sorority girl.
Dude, I wish.
Well, I think Matt is actually in a really unique position because like your high school sweetheart ended up being your wife. And so you've known your wife now like since you were 14 or something like that?
So, yeah, you might. It's apropos, but it's also a story that I believe people enjoy listening to as much as you enjoy telling. So if you want to give everyone a quick overview of your condition.
What is the starting point in your mind of where that story starts? Because I don't want to get it wrong.
Yesterday it starts. Yes, it starts from yesterday.
Okay. No, I think so. A couple of parts to that question. I think we got together in we met and kind of started
The prenatal
dating.
unit.
Yeah, if that's what you want to call it, in 1990.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the summer between my freshman and sophomore year and the summer between her 8th and 9th grade year. So, and we got married in 2000, so 10 years between the two. And so I think the question you asked, there's a unique perspective from it's, when you know somebody for that long, it's not like living together is going to, all of a sudden reveal crazy things you didn't know about somebody, right? I mean, it's like you've pretty much known them for half your life at that point when you get together that young.
Certainly your whole adult life.
Well, right, and I look at it sort of the other way too. And again, I have a unique perspective, and I this is just sort of my take on it. But it's like when you marry somebody, what you're saying is, hey, look, this is the one person I found that I want to spend the rest of my life with. It's hard for me to believe that there's something you could encounter once you start living together, whether it be, and you're like, oh my gosh, like you're my one and only, my true love, but you kind of like to leave dirty dishes around the house. Not sure this is going to work out.
Yeah.
Right. And so, yeah, I don't.
Well, I think though, but your assumption is that when you make that decision, it's like a educated decision.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people say like you're my one and only, but it's based on 6 months of knowing each other. So it's more
Right.
the duration of time rather than
Right.
the inclination to believe someone is your one
No,
and only.
it helps to get to know somebody.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
and the thing too is like, I mean, I guess we'll just kind of delve into the divorce part about this. Is that the thing is that after all the studying I've been doing the last couple months about getting ready for marriage, I can't imagine when I speak about my fiance, I don't ever think divorce is an option. But I can't imagine I'm the only person who ever thought that.
Yeah.
And the divorce rate is like over 50%.
Yeah.
So there's obviously some like misconception going on somewhere. I'm always trying to figure out like what was it that someone didn't anticipate? Like you said, is it an uneducated perspective of like, oh, I guess I didn't anticipate the dishes, or like this person's a human being with flaws and I don't like that. And
Well, you're married, Luke. What's your take?
I think he's
Yeah.
purposely been pretty quiet.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, yeah.
Next subject.
I don't know if there's any like one thing that's like up to the rate of divorce. Like obviously it depends on the relationship, but
right.
I mean I think it's just become more acceptable, so it just kind of snowballed an avalanche, which is a cop-out answer.
Well, you're in the unique position of that your parents are still married.
Yes.
Of all of ours, our parents didn't get divorced till we were quite a bit older.
Yeah, but our parents have been divorced since we were younger.
Yeah, since you were younger. Yeah,
I was gonna say Joel and I are the only ones with like so
What's it like to be happy?
We have we have
like to be whole.
We have no perspective on this situation. No, I from being an outsider looking into divorce, I could be totally wrong about this, but my observations are that I think the major contributor to divorce is the fact that people are less willing now to sort of bend and compromise.
Yeah.
With their significant other.
Stubbornness.
I think people want to do what they want to do with their life, regardless of everyone else.
So selfishness. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, and I think from my perspective too, it's it's not surprising to me. Rhonda and I have this conversation all the time about like, people start these statements with, "Can you believe that?" ... And most of the time I go, "Yeah, I certainly can believe that." It's like, whether it be, our kids do a lot of sports, and there'll be somebody who's never got a hit in their whole life, and Ron would be like, "Can you believe it? That kid struck out." I'm like, "Yes, that's what they do every single time." So it's not surprising at all. And so there was an ad I saw the other day. There's billboards and commercials. This is taxpayer funded. That tells people that you should probably spend some time and read to your kids.
Yeah.
And so in a society where we got to remind people that you might want to spend a lot of time with your kids, is it that surprising that people don't stay married?
Right.
Not to me.
Right. So to play devil's advocate, and I don't know if it's just I don't really like know what my true stance on this would be.
I'll tell you.
Yeah, thank you. Tell me, larger brother, big brother,
Larger brother.
Yeah. Smaller older brother.
yeah. Which is like I don't know like what the historical record is for marriage, like in the sense that we know marriage today, but I always think of, the divorce rate didn't always be 50%, like, back in 50s, 60s, whatever it was, the divorce rate was far lower. But I don't, that doesn't immediately correlate to better to me, because what it means to me is that the social impact of a divorce was so negative that people stayed in marriages because it was just a real scarlet letter. And so, But that doesn't mean it was like necessarily a positive thing. I think what happened, some portion of that ended up in just real horrible abusive relationships, or at the worst end, at the other end, or the non-extreme, is just like really unhappy relationships. And so to me, it's like, I think there is a degree of, hey, some of those people certainly should have been divorced and didn't because of the social ramifications.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I don't, but like, if you could say, well, look, for 1,000 years, marriage has been a staple of society in the vast majority of cultures because it has these benefits.
Well, I think the question you'd have to ask, or the question that would have to be answered, would be, is this something that you could have worked out?
Yeah.
Now, if you have somebody who is you can't do anything about it, they are physically abusive, and there's no change in it, obviously, or even emotionally or whatever. But I think, if you were to ask most people, it's like, I don't know. Yeah, maybe it could have been.
But then again,
I'm not interested in that.
But I also, but it's funny because earlier in the conversation we were making jokes about how like it at least should be an educated, or you hope it's an educated decision to get married in the first place. But let's face it, it's a joke because a lot of people don't. Yeah. And so in that case,
or they ignore it, which is the case a lot of times.
But what I mean is, like, how many people should have never been married in the first place because people make mistakes? And if they never should have been married in the first place, it's like nope, you got a deal, no divorce. Like in those, like, I think for those people, it's probably often the best choice because, like, look, you guys were young, or you made a impulsive decision, or you got married for the wrong reasons, and now you've realized that whatever. And so it's like, what's the alternative? Just live with your mistake.
Well, I think first of all, you have to differentiate between divorce with no kids and divorce with kids.
Yeah, that's a whole.
They are two completely separate different
I
things.
agree, but and I understand why you're saying that is because now you have something other than yourselves to consider. But at the same time, if two people truly don't have a healthy relationship, and not even talking about abuse, just they don't have like a good dynamic or the ability to get along, is that an environment and the single or the primary role model for a relationship that those kids should have? Are they truly better off steeped in that unhealthy dynamic?
I think that's a good question. I think that's like a hard question to answer, especially in...
What? No, it's not super easy.
It was my understanding that there was going to be jokes.
Yeah.
And like people, I think, like, to everybody's point, like everybody's saying, like Luke, you said that, I think you think maybe too many people are just jumping ship too early without really committing and fighting through whatever problems they have. So it begs the question, what scenarios... what scenario should you get divorced, and which scenario should you fight it out?
I actually, not to cut you off, Joel, but I actually have been studying and trying to speak with my fiance about that. Say, like, what are the grounds for divorce? And we came up with three primary ones: infidelity, physical abuse, or like physical harm, to not just you but to the kids as well.
And Lucky Charms versus Captain Crunch.
Bought the wrong cereal. Right. And the third one is
I have divorce papers just waiting for that day.
Yeah, exactly. Now the third one would be if the partner is involved in some sort of criminal or felony type activity.
Drug dealer.
Drug dealer. Yeah, something like that.
El
Yeah, they're doing
Chapo.
something illegal without you knowing. Those would be like the three things. But even to your point,
And
even
if
those
they're-
things are things that you can technically work out. Even like extreme cases. But I think those are the three primary things that I'd say. This is grounds for divorce, not immediate divorce, though.
Well, yeah.
And I think too, you have to. Nobody knows what the world looks like post-divorce, right? I mean, everybody has their sort of idea of what it looks like, and so it's. I think there's always this assumption that, I mean, is potentially whatever's out there better than what you've got now?
But I don't think
Right.
that should but that shouldn't be your measure. Because both are unknowns. Like you don't necessarily know how this is going to unfold, especially if the foundation's questionable. And in this scenario, it is like you're considering options because it's questionable.
Well, I think in my mind, the way I look at it is, I prefer to believe that, like, when you take wedding vows, it's not just for
Well,
yeah,
yeah. No, look, I
Yeah.
prefer to.
This is just what we're supposed
I
to say.
prefer to believe that when Jem left the podcast, that she was in love with me. But something tells me that
I have a strong
You'd be
feeling she
wrong though.
wasn't.
It's Hambo.
but yeah,
Yeah,
but
this podcast isn't about restraining orders, Josh.
I'll make it.
Yeah.
No, but I'm just saying, like, dude, no one should go into marriage without checking a lot of boxes. But it happens all the time, and because of that, divorce should be a very okay option, because otherwise you are forcing people to live with their mistakes in a way that I think just ends up compounding.
No, I totally disagree with that.
That's
No, nobody's forcing anybody to do anything. To me, it's what level of commitment are you willing to put into this? Because things can go wrong, but things can get fixed if you are willing to commit to fixing them. And a lot of people aren't, and I'm not, and sometimes they can't be. Sure, I mean, I'll give you an example. If you get married and you hadn't worked this out before, and one person said, "I really want to have kids," and the other person said, "I don't want to have kids," that's a tough thing to get over. That's a tough thing to work past. There are other things though that, all right, well, hey, look, I think you're drinking too often, or I think you're this, or I think you're that. It's like, all right, well, let's tackle that, and let's see if we can get past it, or any number of problems that people have in marriages. I mean, it takes work.
Yeah.
And again, it's not like a steady line through the whole thing. And there are peaks and valleys, and you got to work through all that stuff. Well, and at any one of those times, you could have just said,
It's
what, I'm
all
fed
peaks.
up. But it's like, look, there's, this is a long journey.
No,
you
and
got to deal with it.
Yeah, get him, Matt. Get him.
Oh, come on, guys. So, no, I will say this, though. Not to misrepresent my own position, and it's coming off probably slightly more defined or aggressive than I want it to be because of just the devil's advocate position. I think if you have made that leap or that decision to get married, then you absolutely should treat it as something categorically different than pre-marriage. Meaning, breaking up is not just breaking up anymore. It is a divorce, and the ramifications, especially if there's kids involved, is something categorically different. And there needs to be a very sophisticated process to getting to that position. But I do think that it is it's appropriate far more often than people tend to consider. Only because I think making fitting a square peg in a round hole in the long run can do more damage than calling it a day and finding someone that is right for you, especially considering how naive people are. Or impulsive people are going into it.
I think though that this is the scenario or a scenario where you can apply an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Absolutely.
I think
It's all in how it's set up.
right. I think if you look at the vast majority of failed marriages, you can look at them in the beginning and be like, I believe that.
Like, no kidding.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I think the emphasis needs to be placed on, okay, like you said,
Yes.
marriage is supposed to be
Yes.
final. It's a one-time deal and that's it. And I think people kind of treat it like
So-
dating 2.0.
Yes.
It's like
It sounds like the problem is too many people are getting married
Well,
rather
too
than
quickly.
too many
Yeah,
people are getting
too
divorced.
quickly.
like you when you look at how many people get married so young, and even when it starts out with the best intentions and they like date for a handful of years, like if you start dating when you're 16, you can date for a number of years and still get married at an age that will in your 20s you develop into very different people, and to me the likelihood that you develop into people that remain compatible is really difficult and at times just not realistic. I know I'm sitting next to a guy who got married again in the prenatal unit, so it's but there's an exception to every rule, but they remain the exception.
I think it's kind of the same of what you were talking about, Matt, which is like the vows part. Like, what does marriage actually mean, and how much value are you actually giving it? And I know every case is different, but and I don't want to get like into the political sphere here, but I'm completely libertarian when it comes to marriage. I want no involvement from any government contract saying this is why I'm getting married. I don't give two squats about that. For me, it's a very spiritual and emotional aspect, and that's what it should be. That's the part where it's like, okay, there's actually value here. I'm actually committing to you on a much deeper level outside of some contract that I signed with the U.S. government.
And that's what it should be, but it's not how a lot of people take it.
And that's the thing, is that I think in a lot of ways I'd push that narrative more with people who say you need to ignore the idea that this is a contract you're signing. This is an emotional investment that is going to require a lifetime commitment come hell or high water. And that's how much value you should give it. And on another note, it should not be so much focused on the internal. I think marriage is a part where you say, you are now more important than me. I think that's the way people should be looking at it. But a lot of times, like you said, people don't look at it that way. They say, this is just going to benefit me because I like love, and love is great because it makes me feel good. But
I love like.
Yeah, I like.
Well, and for me, sort of I mean, I'll full disclaimer. I mean, I don't make any judgments about what people have decided to do with their lives.
Yeah.
What has happened pre-divorce, post-divorce, whatever. I mean, people do what they're going to do. And like
The joy of my life is judging people.
I don't make any judgments.
I was going to say.
Yeah, believe me, this is.
You don't judge?
Yeah, when somebody starts pointing the finger, I can go, no. Fast forward to this part, and you can hear me say that. Yeah. But I mean, and it is. I mean, everybody's got to do what they feel is best for themselves, and again, we have our own ideas of whether or not that's legitimate or valid or acceptable or whatever. But I mean, everybody kind of makes of it what they want to make of it.
I think because look, what you said, Dylan, is right. Which that's how you should approach it. If you don't approach it like, no matter what, it is a government contract. Like, apart from whatever else it might be, it's at least that, and then, but that should be the least of it. It's also this spiritual, emotional investment, but it's also like it's just like a turning point in your life. There's no going back from that has a domino effect that I refuse to believe any 20-year-old understands. Like there's no 21.
Most 20-year-olds.
Well, yeah, sure, hyperbole, but again, like, to understand, like, you are making this commitment and you're saying these vows that have such gravity that, like, to truly understand that, I don't know.
So let me ask you this, because
when I was 20 years old, I didn't understand. I couldn't order for myself at the drive-thru.
I see the road you're going down. So let me ask you this. So assuming that's accurate. So
assuming.
Yeah. Well, no. So somebody does that. They're some 20-year-old bozo. They can't make informed decisions. They're not wise enough or whatever. So do you think, like, where they end up, from the perspective of wisdom and life experience and stuff, is impacted by those bad decisions early on? In other words, if they looked back, would they say, I got to where I'm at now because I failed at these things? Or would they look back and they would say, I wish I'd have never had gotten married at those points and waited until X point? And I think therein lies the issue, because typically what happens is, I mean, obviously there are financial considerations.
Yeah.
If you got kids it's like you think you're leaving somebody, you ain't leaving them. You're attached to them no matter what, and so things get pretty complicated. No, and so it's not just like you cut, clean cut and you split yourself.
It's not, but it's also not like, hey, you stay together and work it out, and like within a couple years, like it'll be cool. Like no, it's like it's sometimes you can work it out and like, or you can have the best intentions to work it out. But I truly believe that some people either are or become incompatible, and that creates a dynamic that is.
I don't disagree.
That is so unhealthy.
But you would also agree that there are plenty of people in the world who are divorced who probably look back and said, I should have worked a little bit harder to make that work.
I think that I 100% agree, and I also know that there's a cliche of the stoic mother who made it work through the 50s and 60s and whatever, because that's what you were supposed to do, who is dead inside.
I think
she'll kick your ass.
Because she's hard as nails.
I think there's another aspect to this, and it's sort of the cultural aspect and like the time aspect, right? Like obviously times change and culture changes with it. But back in the day, it's like you were expected to get married young. Mm-hmm. To your point, you're obviously not really going to make good decisions when you're young. And it was frowned upon to get a divorce. So yeah, you're going to be kind of stuck in that marriage and you make it work. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, stiff upper lip, make it work. Right. And like follow that trail back in time. Like, I don't think there was ever, I can't think of a time off the top of my head where it's like, oh yeah, just man, like, really get to know your partner. And
I think part of it has to do with the fact that that's how great life is now.
Yeah, 100, right? Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, again, you guys had that question the other day about would you go back 200 years? If you went back 200 years, like it's like now you get divorced, you're like, well, I'm just going to go be an Instagram influencer and make a couple $100 a year. Back then, it was like I might starve to death.
I got divorced and starved.
Yeah, seriously. So there's different considerations.
Well, hold on. So were you going? I thought you were going towards a point with that.
I was going towards a point where basically what Matt drove home was now is the best. I mean, it seems like the best time ever to sort of feel your way through a relationship naturally and decide whether or not to get married. People are getting married later than ever these days. I don't know. I mean,
except for the tyrannical patriarchy. Don't forget about that.
whole other conversation.
Yeah. We'll see what the divorce rate does in the next 10 years or so. But
and maybe that's just evolution. Like maybe it's that way, not because of any other influence other than we learned from our predecessors. I don't know, but in the end, I think that the dynamic between two people is so incredibly complicated that you cannot draw a line in the sand. You cannot say divorce is good or it is bad, because there are times when we can all agree it is good and or it is bad. Like there are people that should not stay together that create such a toxic environment, and that's
you can't deny that. So herein lies that, and I think if you were to sort of wrap your head around all the dynamics of this conversation, I think the difference is. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I think
better not.
I think what we're saying is that people haven't put themselves in a position to try to diminish the likelihood that divorce is going to happen enough, and that needs to be worked on. And so you're right. And so I think when you say
just repeat loop.
Yeah, I think when you say is divorce good or bad. Obviously everybody has their own unique situation and they got to decide. But it's bad that so.
It's like saying are hemorrhoids good or bad?
Yeah.
Oh, they're good.
But it's not. You have to. It's bad that it happens so often. So how do we try to avoid it?
Yes, and the only way you try to avoid it is make people smarter. So that's not going to happen.
Yep, that's it.
Well, there's one perspective.
I agree with that 100%.
There's a perspective that I'm nervous to ask about, and it's Cody's perspective.
Don't.
Because
podcast over. Subscribe.
And cut. Goodbye.
Yeah. Well, when Cody gets here, we'll.
Matt, I've been here the whole time.
Oh my gosh, you must be so embarrassed.
Hiding out over there.
What are your thoughts on marriage, Cody?
I don't know.
That's actually a good question.
I guess
This is not podcast Josh talking. This is Josh talking. I want to know your. Actually, I don't.
Yeah.
No, because I realized that his better half is upstairs. So.
Yeah, and just brought him dinner.
Yeah, exactly.
you asked what my
never
perspective
happened to me
on
once.
marriage is.
Yeah. Do you think it's a? Who do you agree with more, Matt or Josh?
I don't know. They both have good points.
Yeah, I don't know who I agree with.
Because polar opposites. Like I feel like it's just a big gray blob. Of,
I'm caught between what I really think and what I think I should say.
Yeah, it's like a Wile E. Coyote, just like a dust ball arm sticking.
Next topic.
Well, yeah, it's a very subjective thing, and there's no answer that I've heard tonight where I'm like, oh, that's wrong. Like, yeah, it's just different perspectives. But yeah,
Well, it's the answer is as complicated as people are.
yeah.
Go, Joel.
I was just gonna say you definitely. I mean, once you do get married, you should have a divorce lawyer on speed dial.
Oh my god!
Wow,
Dude, Joel, you win. You win.
wow,
you just made Josh explode beer.
wow,
Dude, that was. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. That was not intentional.
That's my whole goal in life is to make people do that.
Dude, that was.
Joel
I can't
wins.
believe
That
that,
was a
happened.
full
Joel
blown
wins, yeah.
movie spit take.
That was a.
You guys' next movie has to be called Joel Wins the Internet.
I know what's going in the highlight reel.
front page of Yahoo tomorrow.
You just ruined a microphone.
Yeah, I think I just spit. No, dude, that was 100% unintentional, and
And it was really based on what he said.
it was really big. Yeah. No, I farted.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if you got stung by a bee or something.
No, Joel did his job well, which is I didn't anticipate that one coming. I didn't see it coming.
Good.
Because most of it's been serious, and so I thought Joel was going to offer.
What's funny too is I think so in the stages of sort of marriage that you go through, you go through your sort of initial, we were talking about this the other day. You guys know that we're crazy involved in sports and everything. And now I was just telling these guys, this past Sunday, we had to get up at 4:00 in the morning to leave by 4:45 to go down to Fontana to play softball. And so, the first part of marriage, it was like, we would have debates about, all right, well, who's going to get breakfast burritos? And we'd have NFL Sunday Ticket on all day long. And then we'd lay there and we would argue and debate about who's going to go pick up lunch and then who's going to pick up dinner. We wouldn't move more than 4 inches all day long. And it was great. It was glorious. And then all of a sudden now you got totally different responsibilities and all that stuff. So, and then, you have, your kids get a little older and things change or whatever. So I always tell Rondi, I always say, I hope you still like me when our kids are gone. Because we're going to go back to that time where all we had, because right now you're so busy. Sometimes you don't even have time to think about hey, we're not on the same page or whatever. We're just doing our thing. And all of a sudden, it goes back to that, hey,
you're just hoping that breakfast burrito place still is open.
Yeah.
Right.
What if you spit again after it says
Every time Joel speaks.
Yeah. So anyways, I'm like, because we're gonna have a whole lot of time, just you and I.
Well, but
kids are gonna leave the house. You just look over. Oh yeah, you're here.
Yeah.
Can we adopt somebody?
Yeah. Me.
Yeah.
I'll be available at that time.
Yeah, exactly. And you're all, you guys should get divorced.
Not compatible.
Yeah.
No, I mean you said it like half in jest, but I feel like that is one of the like precursors to the increased divorce rate is all of the baby boomers when they were when the baby boomers first got married, the divorce rate was like 1%. And since then it has steadily increased. And I feel like the empty nest syndrome is one of the major precursors to that. It's one of the inflection points in that increase because that's exactly what happened. Like that's like a real problem. It's gonna happen to you.
Get him, point him out.
I was over here drooling.
Yeah, no, but because I've heard that just listening to different stories or reading or whatever, like that actually happens, which is you become so enveloped in that identity of being a parent and facilitating everything for your kids that's involved in being a parent, that when that's no longer a component of your identity, you suddenly realize like holy cow, we're different people, and we've never been these people in this situation.
Right. So, but I guess,
And it's not, and you're gonna get divorced.
and I guess my response to that would be, is if you take your thinking and your logic to the it's sort of logical conclusion, it would be eventually when you're old enough and you've had enough divorces, you figure out who you can be married to that's least likely to happen with.
No, what I'm saying is
Right?
that there's a lot that is difficult to anticipate, and it's
But that's the same for first, second, third, or 10th marriages.
That's marriage.
no. Look, I'm not saying that I disagree. I'm just saying that given all of the variables included in everything we've talked about, there's certainly a case to be made for divorce at times.
Well, and sometimes you don't get along with your kids, and sometimes you're like, maybe I should just give them up for adoption.
Dude,
Or you should maybe just work.
there are times when that would probably benefit the kid.
But don't you think it's like, I mean, I agree with you that there are obviously times where like you need a divorce. Like
Yeah.
there's no other two ways about it. But I think it is not necessarily good policy to promote the idea that it's okay at any given time. Or at the case of like, those should only be extreme circumstances.
Last resort.
Yeah, it's kind of like, we've tried everything. Like literally, like we're at the point, again, the three things I mentioned earlier: infidelity, something illegal,
Those would
and
be the
physical
extremes,
violence.
yeah.
Those are the extreme cases. Anything outside of that, and even those cases themselves, I could say, you could probably work this out. Because I have this theory, and I've been around a lot of divorce. I know a lot of friends, and obviously my parents were divorced. I think every circumstance difference. It wasn't just like this one thing that happened or whatever. I mean, empty nest, I think, is one of the contributing factors as well. But I've come to the conclusion, and it's not true for every single case, of course, but my conclusion is that someone in the marriage gave up. Someone somewhere said, you know what, it's not worth my time. They stopped putting the effort into it. They said, I'm out. They kind of gave up on the other person. And that, to me, is a failure not on the marriage, it's a failure on that person as a human being. Because you can... Go ahead.
I was going to say, but that could be, so if you're like dedicated to making that marriage work and it's your significant other, that's just like giving up and being like, I'm going to do what I want. I'm not going to sacrifice anything. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to live my life the way I want to live it. And if that, hurts you, it hurts you kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And let's say they're not cheating on each other. It's just like just doing whatever they want to do. It's like,
They're just
then it's on the other person to make that decision. Okay. Like I can't, like, they've tried to change that person's minds. Hey, work with me. Like, let's compromise. Let's, be a married couple. Mm-hmm. It's on that person now to be like, all right, I want a divorce because you're not the person I want to be with the rest of my life.
I think the other factor too is what were you able to kind of figure out before you got married? Because I think there are people who there were sort of signs there beforehand that got ignored and then they got married anyway. Yeah. So I think there's, and again, if you listen to, there's a lot of people who talk about the subject. Rondi always listens to Dr. Laura on the radio and everything. And
Is she still on?
She is, yeah.
She's nice.
Yeah, she's brutal.
Yeah, she is. She's
Sometimes,
very
Dr.
brutal.
Grandma Laura.
Right, but sometimes you listen to that sort of thing and you're like, okay, well, here's the problem I'm having, and then you're like, okay, well, how long did you date? This amount of time. Was he doing that stuff beforehand? Well, yeah. And so you're like, look, it wasn't like this came out of the blue. Like everything was great, and all of a sudden some behavior manifests itself that never existed before. You never had any hint of. Yeah. It's like, look, there were signs of this all the way through.
You should have caught on.
And you ignored them for your own convenient reasons. I want to get married and whatever. And it's like that's
not an edge case. Like that happens probably like 50% of the time.
I agree.
Yeah, but that's my point. Is in those cases like if you suddenly realize like divorce is a serious thing, but it's humans that are making that decision, and so what that means is it should be serious, but divorce is sometimes just a decision someone makes, and it's not made in any kind of with any kind of real forethought that it should be made with. In which case, it's not like at that point it doesn't mean like, hey, you stick it out through thick and thin no matter what because you made that decision when you were not as intelligent as you are now. Like, for example...
I agree with that. I think the problem is people expect like a ton of sympathy. And it's like, well, cry me a river. You knew this, what you were getting
Sure,
into.
but that would be a different subject. Is what's expected post-divorce from an idiot. Yeah. But my point is Dylan was saying, like, in these extreme cases. But look, let's say like you graduate high school with your high school sweetheart. You've been together for 1 year, and your post-graduation summer vacation is to Vegas, and you go to Vegas and you get swept up and you get married, and a year later you realize, I've been with this person 2 years. I am 19 years old, 20 years old, and we shouldn't have done that.
Plan your 80th anniversary.
Yeah, to me, I would say, I would say, now consider these things, follow this process, but it would be a pretty short one. And then after, if they dot their I's, cross their T's, run to the courthouse and get divorced. Do not spend more of your time with a mistake than you already have.
Well, I think we're going around.
But hold on, sorry. But my point is that there's no abuse there. There's no infidelity. There's no criminal action. And divorce is by far their best right answer.
Right. Yeah, but you just described a marriage scenario that happens in the 1/10 of 1% of the time.
That is the far end, but I think that there's an area or a percentage of marriages that are closer to that than anything on the other end.
Go, Joel.
I was just going to say, I think we're going around in circles here. I think we all agree on pretty much the same thing, is that most divorces can be prevented by just making sure you're getting into a marriage that you want to get into.
They need like a Smokey the Bear for marriages. Yeah. Only you can prevent it.
Yeah. That is a Family Guy joke.
Now, speaking of marriages, putting oil on the fire, how about prenups? We don't have that much time.
Dude, Cody scared himself.
Yeah. You needed to take a drink when he said that. You can spit again.
I know we're like kind of kidding about this, but
I don't know if we'll have enough time.
The idea of as I've known, like you mentioned, like if you go the no sympathy part, because divorce is a horrible thing to go through, and so again, it should literally be the last resort, like we've mentioned.
Unless you have a six-pack.
Yeah, something along those lines. But when kids get involved, the thing that drives me nuts more than anything is custody battles. Talk about, we are in no way, shape, or form an advantage in this. And I remember I told, this is one of my exes back in the day, about like, why are men so afraid of commitment in marriage? Like, why is that? I said, well, statistically, it's stacked against us. 50% of marriages end in divorce. And of that 50%, there's like a 99% chance I'm going to have to pay you a crap ton of money and I'm never going to see my kids. How is that fair? So if anything, this should be like, guys go, I should probably think about this a lot before I commit to this person. This is why, again, I'm like, keep the government out of it. We can settle that later on. But even in that case, it's like, I think people need to realize that there's a lot of damage that goes in, not just financially speaking, but emotionally speaking to kids as well. I mean, Cody and I are a complete wreck because of our parents were divorced.
Well, when my parents got divorced, I was 25, I think, and I decided to live with my dad.
You were already living.
Yeah. And I would visit my mom on the weekends.
Yeah.
So it was fine. I'm fine.
Yeah. No.
I think a lot of people. I mean, sometimes. I mean, Dylan, to your point, if people are that, or if guys or whoever are that afraid of commitment on like a legal aspect, then just don't get married on like a government level.
Yeah.
What's stopping you from making
just
that
draw a pentagram on the floor?
Tax benefits.
But there's rules and laws now, like common law stuff.
Yeah, there's common law stuff.
Yeah, where if you've lived together in the same house for 10 years, you might as well be married because legally
right.
you are financially obligated.
And I understand that, but that doesn't. How does that defeat the argument of if you want to be with that person, you're going to be with that person?
Right. Do you want to fight or?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
I could ride you that computer.
Put your dukes up.
I'll ride you like a computer.
I don't think anyone is going to get married to get involved with the government. I don't think that's a reason.
You know what? I'm not contractually obligated enough to the government.
Yeah.
Right.
Get over here.
I really want a contract with the government.
Yeah.
We should get married.
I paid extra taxes just for the hell of it this year.
All I know is that
I feel like I did too.
Having divorced parents, especially younger, if they get along, it's one thing. I mean, it's great. But for us, it was awesome because as little kids, it's 2 Christmases, 2 birthdays.
See, now that's what I'm pissed about because
pretty awesome.
we never got that.
Yeah, you guys
you didn't get one Christmas.
Yeah, we're super pissed because our parents stayed together when we were younger.
Yeah, I feel like you're a special case though because it happened.
You know what? You just shot all your arguments right to hell.
No.
Yes, you did.
But hold on. My only response to this is like to.
I can't wait. So
Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna get divorced from Rondi, and my kids are gonna just bawl their eyes out. And I'm gonna go, time out.
Yeah.
You haven't thought about it. You get 2 Christmases.
No. I have a really healthy outlook on relationships because of my one primary example is such a great example.
Well, my example.
Dude, you left the house when you were in kindergarten.
It's all coming out now.
Right.
Yeah.
I grew up on the mean streets of Ventura.
Okay, well,
Didn't get a word.
Yeah, spiking like crazy.
Anywho.
Yeah.
Tourette's.
Well, that was a fun, exciting topic, guys. Right? It was a lot of fun energy here.
Dylan will overdub some farts in there somewhere.
Yeah, that was. I got a little deep.
Yeah.
Well, hey.
Don't come on the podcast
Ever again.
I left. We were missing a set of headphones. I left and I came back and they're like, "We're going to talk about divorce."
That's what we're gonna do.
We're all in black.
All right.
We're all in black hoods.
Yeah.
Oh,
Chanting.
If you guys liked watching and listening, you should check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and follow us there. And if you are watching on YouTube, subscribe. It would be much appreciated, and I'm sure Josh would appreciate it too.
what?
The only other one.
I've coughed more than I've said anything.
He's like, no, I wouldn't.
I wouldn't do that.
No, sir. What?
Anyway, thank you guys for watching and listening. We'll talk to you next time. Bye.